I vowed to repay when I'm older. The shop descended into an eerie silence after those words escaped the young girl's lips. The surveillance camera above buzzed quietly. A well-dressed gentleman, tall with silver streaking his temples, pivoted toward the voice that pierced through preoccupied thoughts like a murmur in a cathedral. Jerome Carter, previously labeled a phantom billionaire by Forbes for his talent at avoiding publicity despite commanding a vast technology corporation, discovered himself gazing at a child no older than 8 cradling an infant swaddled in a worn towel. The girl went by Anna. Her locks were matted into uneven clusters, her palms grimy, her blouse soiled, and her denim torn at the knees. The infant she held whined, starved and chilled. A harsh December gust swept outside, yet the frost inside the establishment cut deeper now. The store clerk noticed him and barked, "Hey, this isn't a nursery, move along." Anna recoiled. She tightened her hold on the infant and gazed downward, already rotating to exit, frame quivering not from terror, but from shame. Jerome advanced, his tone steady yet resolute. "She's not taking anything," she requested courteously. The clerk glanced up, surprised. "Mr. Carter? Sir, observe her. She doesn't fit here." "I'll determine that," Jerome stated. Patrons had started to pay attention. A lady near the publications murmured, "That's the child who rests beneath the 7th Street overpass." Another gentleman by the refrigerator added, "I learned her father's incarcerated, and the mother's mentally unstable. Tragic situation." Jerome knelt next to Anna, who remained motionless by the infant formula aisle. "What's your name?" he inquired. "Anna," she replied without meeting his gaze. "And the infant?" "My brother, Elijah. He's 1 year old." Jerome gentled his voice. "You traveled here in this bitter weather?" Anna confirmed. "We exhausted our milk yesterday. Elijah won't stop wailing. I waited until Mama dozed off to slip away. She hollers sometimes, and I didn't want her pursuing me." Jerome eyed the clerk, who now stood uncomfortably behind the register pretending to scan gum. "Do you possess a jacket?" he asked tenderly. Anna declined. "I bundled Elijah in the cover. It's our only warm item." He rose slowly, his thoughts racing through calculations, possibilities, choices. The same mental process that once helped him construct a multi-billion-dollar enterprise now circled a far more urgent predicament. What action do you take when a child appears before you displaying more bravery than any adult you've encountered? "We're purchasing more than just milk," he declared. "Stay near me." Jerome selected a gallon of whole milk, baby formula, bread, infant wipes, and canned soup. He included a carton of diapers and thermal socks, disregarding confused stares from fellow shoppers. At the register, Anna barely cleared the counter. She lifted the milk with both shaking hands as if presenting a precious offering. "Thank you, sir," she whispered, "but I truly will repay you when I'm grown. I promise." Jerome acknowledged seriously. "I have no doubt whatsoever." When they emerged into the parking area, the frigid wind struck harder. Anna blinked rapidly to prevent her tears from crystallizing. "Where are you residing?" he asked. Anna wavered. "It's fine," he said. "I won't reveal it." She gazed up at him, uncertain yet truthful. "Beneath the bridge, 7th and Douglas. There's a sheltered spot behind a pipe. I keep Elijah comfortable with newspapers and ensure nobody spots us." A woman nearby audibly gasped. Jerome turned toward her, but she averted her gaze, embarrassed. He returned to Anna. "Would you like me to escort you back?" She hesitated again, then shrugged. "People shout when they see me with him, but you can accompany if desired. Just don't speak loudly. Mama frightens easily." As they walked, Jerome experienced a peculiar burden of responsibility descending upon his shoulders, not the type you consign to others, but the kind you bear because departing would torment you more than remaining would trouble you. "Are you cold?" he asked. Anna didn't respond, but her teeth chattered. Elijah whimpered once more. Jerome removed his wool overcoat and draped it around her. She appeared astonished, but didn't object. They crossed the street in quiet until the overpass appeared. Vehicles rumbled overhead and the scent of petroleum, moist concrete, and refuse intensified. Behind a row of corroded shopping carts and a plastic barrier, a woman lay curled on a mound of old covers, her face concealed. She stirred at the footsteps, then sat upright abruptly, her eyes unfocused and frantic. "Mama," Anna called softly. "It's only me and a gentleman. He assisted us." Her mother's voice slurred. "You weren't meant to depart." Jerome maintained his distance. He remained back, respectfully watching. The woman settled when she spotted Elijah reaching out with trembling arms. "She was merely seeking assistance," he said gently. The woman didn't reply. Anna transferred the baby, then faced Jerome. "You may leave now. We'll manage. I only require the milk." But Jerome remained motionless. Instead, he said, "Anna, I'd like to return tomorrow. Would that be acceptable?" Anna tilted her head. "Why?" He paused. Then, with the type of certainty he hadn't experienced in years, he said, "Because someone ought to." That evening, Jerome couldn't sleep. Somewhere beneath the highway's roar, a young girl was humming gently to an infant, wrapped in a billionaire's coat. And in the stillness of his glass penthouse, a man understood that perhaps the wealthiest thing he could ever become was necessary. If this account moved your heart, give it a like to demonstrate your support for Anna, and share in the comments where you're viewing from. Who knows? Someone nearby might be watching alongside you right now. Don't forget to subscribe for more compelling stories like this one. The dawn air stung Jerome's lungs as he stepped from his black Lincoln SUV and secured the door behind him. He wasn't attired like a billionaire today. No suit, no necktie, just denim, a plain navy pullover, and a heavy jacket. The type of man who could be mistaken for someone traveling through. But his eyes, keen, alert, were identical to those that once negotiated multi-million-dollar deals. Today, however, they searched for something different. 7th and Douglas hadn't transformed overnight. The debris remained in the gutters. The bridge still growled with traffic above. But Jerome's attention went to far left section of the underpass, the location Anna had guided him to last evening. His heart pounded with an unexpected weight. He was frightened, not for himself, but for what he might discover or fail to find. He spotted the familiar plastic covering, the shopping cart filled with damaged toys and bundled clothing. And there, curled on, a flattened cardboard sheet, was Anna. Elijah nestled against her chest like a second pulse. Her eyes were shut, but the instant his footsteps echoed too loudly, she awakened. She sat up quickly, watchful like a small creature, then relaxed upon seeing his face. "You returned," she said, her voice rough from the cold. "I said I would." Anna drew Elijah closer, his tiny fingers still grasping a corner of Jerome's coat. "He didn't cry much last evening," she whispered. "The milk helped." Jerome retrieved a thermos from his bag and offered it to her. "It's heated, hot chocolate, not overly sweet." Her eyes brightened with disbelief. Then she opened the lid carefully, took a sip, and sighed like an adult finding tranquility. "Tastes like Christmas." He smiled slightly. That was the intention. A sudden rustling behind the plastic barrier made Jerome tense. Sarah emerged slowly, one hand steadying herself against the wall, the other shielding her eyes from the sun. Her hair was disheveled, and her expression wavered between suspicion and recognition. "You again," she said hoarsely. "I brought them breakfast," Jerome replied. Sarah nodded slowly, but her body language remained rigid. She still stood like someone prepared for conflict. "You at the city?" "CPS." "No," Jerome said. "Just me?" She examined the paper bag in his hand. "What's inside there?" "Egg sandwiches and 2 blankets." Sarah snorted softly. Wealthy folks always believe blankets solve things. "They don't." Jerome agreed, "but they help." He placed the bag near the wall and stepped back. Sarah reached into it, extracted one of the sandwiches, sniffed it, then handed it to Anna. You need to stop appearing, she said, biting into the sandwich herself. People like you don't belong in places like this. Neither do you, Jerome answered without hesitation. She paused mid-bite, her gaze locked with his, weary, sharp, and aching with the type of pain that rejected sympathy. You don't know a damn thing about where I belong. I don't, he said softly, but I'd like to. Sarah scoffed. Why? Jerome looked at Anna, then Elijah, then back at Sarah. Because your daughter trusted me. And because last evening when I departed, I didn't appreciate how it felt. Sarah shook her head. You feel guilty. You'll drop off food for a few days, perhaps give us coats and kind words, then you'll disappear. They always disappear. I'm not them. You're exactly them. Expensive vehicle, soft shoes, eyes that look through people. Anna interrupted the tension. Mama, he spoke to me like a real person, not like the people who distribute socks at the shelters. Jerome stayed silent, letting the words settle where they needed to. Sarah finally sat against the wall, wrapping her blanket tighter. You have kids? No, he said. My wife died 10 years ago. No children. You lonely? He nodded once. Sometimes. A long silence followed. The only sound was Elijah's faint finger-sucking, and the cars rumbling above like distant thunder. You still want to help? Sarah asked finally, her voice thin. Yes. Then don't just bring food. Bring a way out. Jerome's breath caught. That was the genuine request. Not sandwiches or milk. A way out. And it wasn't a small thing. I don't want charity, Sarah continued. I want an opportunity. I want to wash my hair without a hose. I want to sleep without watching over my shoulder. I understand, he said. No, she whispered. You don't, but maybe you're attempting. That's more than most. Jerome surveyed the area. The world around him smelled of damp concrete and forgotten narratives, but he also saw something rare. A child who still believed in promises and a woman who still had fire behind wounded eyes. He stood, brushed the dust from his knees. There's a motel 3 blocks from here. I can secure you a room for a week. Just 1 week for now. Warm bed, shower, secure door. Sarah studied him. What's a condition? No condition. You don't even need to thank me. Just give Anna and Elijah a night with clean sheets. She didn't answer for a long time. Then, softly, we'll go. But if you lie, if this is some twisted power game. It's not. She nodded once. Then, okay. As they gathered their few possessions, Jerome called his assistant from the sidewalk, booked the room, and arranged to have a small bundle of toiletries delivered. The process took minutes, but for Sarah and Anna, it changed everything. On the walk to the motel, Anna held Jerome's hand the entire way. She didn't say much, just walked beside him like it was the most natural thing in the world. Before they entered the lobby, she tugged his sleeve. Mr. Carter? Yeah. You didn't have to come back, but I'm glad you did. Jerome felt his throat constrict. He squeezed her hand gently and whispered, So am I? As they stepped through the automatic doors into a place with heat, running water, and soft beds, Jerome realized something simple and terrifying. This wasn't going to be temporary. Not for him. The motel room was no palace. The walls were stained from age. The carpet smelled faintly of old cigarettes, and the heater wheezed like a dying animal. But for Anna, it might as well have been a fantasy. She stood in the center of the room holding Elijah, eyes wide, turning slowly in place as if afraid it might all vanish if she blinked too long. It's warm, she whispered. Jerome smiled softly from the doorway. That's the heater. She's old, but she works. Sarah dropped the plastic bag with their clothes on the dresser. Her expression was unreadable, caught somewhere between suspicion and exhaustion. She hadn't said much during the walkover, and now that they were inside, she looked out of place, like a bird unsure if the cage door was really open. Jerome placed a small duffel on the table. Shampoo, toothbrushes, clean towels, diapers too. Sarah nodded but didn't thank him. He didn't expect her to. Gratitude couldn't be demanded, not when trust was still a fragile thing between them. Anna placed Elijah carefully on the bed, tucking the corners of the comforter around him like she'd done it 100 times. He cooed softly, closing his eyes, the warm air already doing its work. Jerome leaned against the wall and crossed his arms. I'll check back tomorrow. You'll have privacy here. Front desk knows not to ask questions. Sarah finally spoke. You do this often? No, he said. This is new for me. She studied him. You don't look like the bleeding heart type. I'm not. Then why? He paused before answering. Because I can. Because I should have done something like this a long time ago. Her face flickered, not with sympathy, just a recognition of honesty. Before he could say more, Anna walked over and reached into her pocket. She pulled out a small, crumpled napkin and handed it to him. I drew this for you, she said shyly. Jerome unfolded it. In pencil, barely visible, was a sketch of a tall man holding hands with a small girl and a baby. They were standing in front of a building with the word home scribbled above the door. He cleared his throat. You're quite the artist. Anna beamed. I draw when I get scared. It helps. Jerome didn't know what to say to that. He folded the napkin gently and slid it into his coat pocket. Then, keep drawing. He stepped back, his hand already on the doorknob, when Sarah said quietly, Don't get too close. He turned. To what? To us. You seem like a decent man. But this life, it's a sinking ship. I'm not here to rescue anyone, he said. I'm just here to walk beside you for as long as you'll let me. She didn't answer. That night, Jerome went home to his penthouse. The lights flickered on automatically, casting a soft glow on the sleek kitchen counters, the polished floors, the endless windows that looked out over Los Angeles. It was beautiful, sterile, empty. He poured himself a glass of scotch, but didn't drink it. Instead, he walked to the sofa and sat with Anna's drawing still in his pocket, the paper warm from his body heat. Somewhere 3 miles away, a girl who promised to pay for milk was sleeping under clean sheets, and he had never felt more alive. Morning arrived with rain. Jerome was already on his way back to the motel by 8 a.m., a bag of fresh pastries in one hand and a new coat for Anna in the other. But when he arrived at room 109, the door was wide open. The bed was made, the toiletries untouched, the blankets folded with military precision. They were gone. His stomach sank. He stepped inside, checking the bathroom, the closet, even beneath the bed. Nothing. He walked out to the front desk. The family in 109, where'd they go? The clerk, a young man chewing gum, shrugged. Lady came down early. Said they couldn't stay. Left a key and walked out. No explanation? Didn't ask. Jerome thanked him and stepped out into the drizzle, his heart beating a little too fast. He scanned the street, the sidewalk, the alleys. Nothing. They had vanished. Anna hadn't wanted to leave. Sarah woke her just before sunrise, whispering sharply to pack. Anna protested. But, Mama, it's warm here. Mr. Carter, he said he'd come back. That's exactly why we can't stay, Sarah hissed. No good comes from people with too much to give. They always want something back. Anna had obeyed, not understanding but knowing better than to argue. They left through the side stairwell, back into the cold, back toward nothing. Jerome spent the rest of the day driving around the neighborhood surrounding the bridge, stopping at shelters, soup kitchens, even a small park where he'd once handed out bottled water during a charity event 5 years ago. No sign. That night, he returned to the bridge. It was quiet, rain-soaked. The makeshift bedding was gone. The corner Anna had once called home was now just concrete and shadows. He sat on the edge of the curb, watching the rain carve tiny rivers along the street. He had known she might run. He had even expected it. Not this fast. Not without goodbye. He reached into his coat, pulled out the napkin sketch, and unfolded it beneath the streetlight. The pencil lines had blurred slightly from the dampness, but the image was still clear. A man, a girl, a baby, and the word home. He wasn't sure how long he sat there. An hour, maybe two, long enough for the rain to soak through his shoes. When he finally stood, he whispered to the empty street, "Wherever you go, Anna, I'm not done." Then he walked back toward his car, the napkin still clutched in his hand, like a promise not yet fulfilled. The next morning, Jerome didn't go into the office. His assistant called twice, once about a postponed investor meeting, once about a misfiled real estate contract. Both times, he let it go to voicemail. He wasn't thinking about stocks or shareholders. He was thinking about a girl who promised to repay him for milk, a girl with a baby brother and an absent father, and a mother who ran from kindness like it was a threat. Anna's sketch lived in his wallet now, folded carefully between his driver's license and a coffee loyalty card he'd never used. Every time he opened it, he saw their faces as it burned into the paper. Anna, Elijah, Sarah. Jerome drove the city like a man hunting ghosts. He stopped at the 7th Street Bridge again, scanning the dark corner for any sign they'd returned. The rain had washed the sidewalk clean. No food wrappers, no blankets, not even a trace of shoe prints. By noon, he'd visited 3 shelters. At the third, Henrietta Redbrick Community Center, with a flaking mural of smiling children, he finally got something. "Yeah," said a thin woman at the intake desk. "I saw a girl with a baby yesterday. Small, dirty coat, big eyes." Jerome leaned in. With a woman? Early 30s, dark hair, possibly anxious or agitated. The woman nodded slowly. "Yeah." She was nervous. Didn't stay. Said something about not trusting the government. Took some diapers and left. "Did they say where they were going?" "No, sorry. But I heard the girl, Anna, I think, asked about food banks near Wilshire." Wilshire. It wasn't much, but it was a direction. Jerome thanked her and left. By 3 p.m., he was weaving through Koreatown, peering down alleyways and around bus stops. He walked into a corner store near Vermont Avenue and bought a pack of gum, just asked the cashier if they'd seen a little girl carrying a baby. No one had. He was about to leave when he noticed a corkboard near the door. Among the business cards and faded flyers, there was a paper tack near the bottom. Found. Children's jacket, blue with stars, size XS. Found on Wilshire and Hoover Corner. If yours, call. He took a photo of the number. When he called, a woman picked up. "Hello?" "Yes. I'm calling about the jacket posted on the board in Sam's Market. I think it may belong to someone I'm looking for." There was a pause. "You know the child?" "Her name's Anna. She's about 8. Has a baby brother. Their mother's name is Sarah." The woman's voice softened. "I saw them 2 nights ago. They were sitting outside the laundromat next to the taco stand. The little girl dropped the jacket when they left. Do you know where they went?" "I think they were headed toward MacArthur Park. That's all I know." Jerome's breath quickened. "Thank you. Are they okay?" "I hope to God they are," he said. He drove straight to MacArthur Park. The sky was turning amber with the fading sun. The lake glistened darkly, and pigeons gathered around the few people who hadn't yet left for the shelters. Jerome walked slowly, scanning each bench, the corner of the playground, until a sound stopped him. It wasn't crying. It was singing, a soft hum, almost too faint to hear over the traffic. He turned toward the sound and saw a shape hunched near the far side of the park, behind a low hedge. A girl rocking gently, humming something like a lullaby. "Anna," he called. She froze. Jerome stepped closer. "It's me, Mr. Carter." She turned, her eyes wide. Elijah stirred in her lap, blinking up at the sudden light. "Mr. Carter," she breathed. "You found us." She looked thinner, paler. Her lips were cracked, but she still managed to smile. "I told Mama you'd come," she said, but she got scared. She said people don't help without wanting something back. Jerome crouched down beside them. Is she here? Anna shook her head. She went looking for medicine. For Elijah, she told me to wait. That was this morning. How long have you been alone? She shrugged. A while. Jerome looked around. The wind had picked up. The temperature was dropping fast. Come on, he said. You're not staying here tonight. But Mama will leave a note. But you and Elijah need warmth, food, safety. Your mom would want that. She hesitated, then looked down at her brother. Okay. He lifted Elijah carefully, cradling him in his arms like he'd done it 1,000 times. Anna followed beside him, silent and small, her hand wrapped tightly around his coat. This time, he didn't take them to a motel. He took them home. The elevator opened into Jerome's penthouse with a quiet chime. Anna stepped in cautiously, her eyes wide at the gleaming floors and endless windows. Elijah whimpered in his sleep, still in Jerome's arms. This is where you live? She asked. Yes, Jerome said. For now, it's where you'll live too. She looked at the kitchen, at the long leather couch, at the framed black and white photo of Jerome and a woman with kind eyes, his wife, long gone. Do you have a bedroom? 3, he replied, but you'll get the one with the big window. Anna's voice dropped. I've never had my own bed. Jerome smiled softly. Then it's about time. He laid Elijah gently on the couch, pulled a throw blanket over him, then turned back to Anna. We'll figure it out, he said. You, me, your mom. But we start with this. Tonight, you are safe. Anna nodded, and for the first time since they met, she let herself cry, not with noise or panic, but quiet, grateful tears. Outside, the city lit up with headlights and sirens. But inside, a door had finally opened wide enough to let Hope walk in. Jerome didn't sleep much that night. He sat in the leather armchair near the window, watching the city glow and flicker beneath him like a restless sea of stars. Behind him, the soft hum of the heater filled the penthouse, blending with the occasional rustle from the guest bedroom where Anna and Elijah were finally resting warm, safe, and fed. But Sarah was still out there. He kept picturing her face, wary, proud, and burdened with too many years of watching people come and go. Jerome didn't doubt that she meant to come back to MacArthur Park that afternoon, but hours had passed. The sun had set. The police reports on his laptop offered nothing. No arrests, no hospital intakes matching her description. Just silence. At 3 a.m., he called an old friend, Michael Sandler, a retired LAPD detective who now ran a private investigation firm. Mike, it's Jerome. Jerome? You calling me in the middle of the night? No one dead. Not yet, but I'm afraid someone might be if I don't act. Mike was silent for a beat. I'm listening. I need to find a woman. Sarah, early 30s, thin, dark hair, possibly struggling with mental health. Last seen at MacArthur Park, possibly looking for medication for her infant son. Homeless. Yes. And this woman means something to you? She means something to a little girl sleeping in my guest room. Mike whistled. All right. I'll get a team on it when the sun's up. Thanks, Jerome said. Bill me whatever it takes. You got it. When Jerome finally drifted off, it was near dawn. He awoke to the smell of toast and the soft clink of dishes. Groggy, he stepped into the kitchen and found Anna standing on a stool, carefully watching bread in the toaster, like it was a rare performance. She turned when she saw him. Good morning, Mr. Carter. Morning, Anna, he said, rubbing his eyes. You didn't have to make breakfast. She shrugged. Mama says if someone gives you a roof, you better give them a reason not to regret it. Jerome smiled more deeply than he had in months. Well, consider this toast a reason. They sat together at the kitchen island, Jerome with coffee, Anna with orange juice. Elijah and the bouncer see Jerome had ordered hours earlier and had delivered before sunrise. Jerome kept things light, asked about her favorite color, her favorite book, if she liked animals. She answered carefully at first, then with more ease. By the time she told him about the stuffed raccoon she'd once found in a trash bin and named Buttons, he was laughing. But as soon as he asked about Sarah, her shoulders stiffened. "She always comes back," Anna said quietly. "Do you remember where she went yesterday?" She said the corner pharmacy on Wilshire. "But I don't think she made it. Sometimes she gets stuck." Anna looked down at her juice. She gets scared. Her head starts to buzz, and she can't breathe right. Then she runs. Jerome's heart ached. "Has that happened before?" Anna nodded. "Last year, she disappeared for 2 days. Came back with cuts on her hands. Said she fought shadows." He reached over and gently covered her hand with his. "I've got someone helping me look for her. A good man. He used to be a cop. We'll find her." She blinked hard, but her voice stayed steady. "You promise?" "I do." Later that morning, Mike called. "Jerome, we might have something." A woman matching Sarah's description was seen wandering near a closed clinic on Temple Street. She was confused, barefoot, asking for baby aspirin. "Did anyone call emergency services?" "Yeah." A store clerk got worried and called in a wellness check. But by the time responders arrived, she was gone. Jerome paced the living room, his jaw tight. Where would she go next? Mike was quiet a moment. If she's scared and avoiding hospitals, she's probably going somewhere she thinks is safe. Shelter maybe, or back streets near old hangouts. Jerome thought for a moment. Check the alley behind the old Korean church on Wilshire. Anna mentioned it once. She said they used to sit there on Sundays because the choir music made her mom smile. "I'll send someone." An hour later, Mike called again. "We found her." Jerome's chest clenched. "Is she okay?" "Physically? Yes. Mentally, she's rattled." Was sitting against the side of the church, crying, holding a broken baby bottle. Wouldn't speak to anyone. "Where is she now?" "We convinced her to come to my clinic. My wife's there. She works with trauma cases. She got her calm enough to rest." "I'm coming." The clinic was small, tucked behind a florist shop and a coffee house. Discreet, private. Inside, Jerome found Sarah curled up on a vinyl couch, wrapped in a donated blanket, her shoes beside her. She looked up as he entered, and for a moment she didn't recognize him. Then her eyes widened. "Where's Anna?" "She's safe with Elijah at my place." Her body sagged with relief, but then the panic returned. "I didn't mean to leave her. I was trying to find—" He had a cough, and I didn't have the medicine. "I know," Jerome said gently. "You don't have to explain. You were doing your best." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I didn't think you'd still be looking." "I promised, and I would." Sarah looked down at her hands. "Why do you care? Why are you doing this for us?" Jerome sat beside her. "Because I can. Because I believe people deserve more than survival." She nodded slowly, the tears still coming. "I want help, but I'm scared. What if I mess this up?" "You probably will," Jerome said, and her head snapped up in surprise. "We all do, but that doesn't mean you don't deserve another shot." She laughed, watery and broken. "You're not what I expected." He smiled. "Neither are you." They sat in silence for a while. Then Jerome said, "Come home." Sarah stared at him. "To your place. For now. Until we figure out the next step. You have a daughter waiting. And a son who slept through the night for the first time in weeks." She hesitated. Then, finally, she nodded. And for the second time in 2 days, Jerome Carter brought a piece of the broken world into his arms and took it home. The elevator door slid open with a soft ding, and Sarah stepped tentatively into Jerome's penthouse like someone crossing a threshold into another world. Her clothes were different, clean, donated by the clinic, but the way she moved was still cautious, shoulders slightly hunched, eyes darting to every corner. Anna spotted her first. "Mama!" she cried, bolting from the hallway, bare feet padding against the polished floor. Sarah dropped her bag, kneeling as Anna crashed into her arms. They held each other tightly, and for a moment, nothing else existed, just mother and daughter, clinging together like two halves of a soul. "I was so scared," Anna whispered. "I thought something bad happened." "I'm here now," Sarah murmured. "I didn't mean to go. My mind, it got loud." Jerome stood quietly by the kitchen island, giving them space. He felt something crack open in his chest, watching them, something old and hollow and long-sealed. When Elijah stirred from his nap and started fussing, Sarah rushed to him. She scooped him up, holding him to her chest like it was the only way to keep herself from floating away. "I forgot how heavy he's gotten," she said with a sad smile. "That means he's been eating," Jerome said. "Twice a day, and more if Anna talks me into it." Anna grinned. "I told him Elijah likes mashed bananas. We even bought a bouncer chair." Sarah looked around the penthouse now with new eyes, the gleaming surfaces, the soft lighting, the floor-to-ceiling windows. She was still on edge, but less so. The weight of her children in her arms grounded her. Jerome gestured toward the dining table, where he'd set out lunch: grilled cheese, tomato soup, and apple slices, the kind of comfort food he hadn't made since college. He'd burned the first sandwich and undersalted the soup, but the second batch had come out okay. "It's not fancy," he said, "but it's warm." Anna's eyes lit up. "We never sit at a real table. Not since we lost Grandma's house." "That was 3 years ago," Sarah said softly. She eased Elijah into his chair and helped Anna into hers. Jerome poured 3 glasses of water and sat with them. They ate mostly in silence. The good kind, the kind that feels like healing. Halfway through the meal, Sarah looked up. "This won't be forever, right?" Jerome nodded. "Just until you're ready. Because I want to earn it. I don't want to be a charity case." "I understand," he said. "I've already started looking into transitional housing programs. Safe places, private, with support services." Sarah nodded slowly. "That would help." After lunch, Anna convinced Jerome to help her build a pillow fort in the living room. They spent nearly an hour constructing it, tossing couch cushions, throw blankets, and even a few of Jerome's expensive linen sheets, which he sacrificed without hesitation. Inside the fort, Anna curled up beside Elijah, who was now wide-eyed and kicking his feet happily. Sarah watched from the armchair, a quiet smile on her lips. Jerome brought her a mug of chamomile tea and sat across from her. "I forgot how quiet a real home can be," she said. Jerome nodded. "Quiet can be good." She sipped the tea and looked at him. "You've lost someone." He didn't flinch. "My wife, 10 years ago. Cancer." Sarah's expression softened. "I'm sorry. I kept this place as it was when she died. Same furniture, same books on the shelves. Never really moved on." "Why not?" Jerome stared into his tea. "Maybe I thought if I kept everything the same, she wouldn't feel gone." Sarah nodded slowly. "That kind of silence. I know it too. You miss their voices, their smell, the way the air feels when they walk a room." They sat in silence for a while, sipping tea. Then Sarah asked, "Why us?" Jerome looked up. "You could have passed by. You could have walked out after giving Anna the milk. But you stayed. Why?" He thought for a long moment before answering. "Because the world keeps telling me money fixes everything. And it doesn't. But showing up, listening, sharing a meal, a room, a moment, that still matters. And maybe I needed that reminder as much as you needed the help." Sarah blinked fast, then looked away. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "Letting people in. Trusting." "You don't have to know," Jerome said. "Just start." That night, after dinner, Anna drew again, this time at the coffee table, using real colored pencils Jerome had bought earlier that day. She drew a house with 4 stick figures this time, a man, a woman, a girl, and a baby. And above them, she wrote one word in big block letters: "Trying." She handed it to Jerome before bed. "This one's better than the first." He held it carefully, like it might break. It is... Sarah put Elijah to sleep in the guest room's crib, then stood in the hallway, watching Anna brush her teeth in the mirror. She's different already, Sarah said quietly. She feels safe, Jerome replied. Sarah glanced at him. I want to be the kind of mother she deserves. Not just someone surviving. You're already more than that. They stood there a moment longer. Then Sarah whispered, I still don't know if I can trust this. Trust you? I don't expect you to, Jerome said, but I'll keep showing up anyway. She nodded, then disappeared into the guest room, and Jerome was left alone again in the living room. But it didn't feel so empty anymore. There were crumbs on the table, a crayon under the couch, laughter echoing faintly down the hall. For the first time in a long time, Jerome Carter's home felt like it was breathing alive. And he realized perhaps this wasn't just about helping them find a home. Maybe it was about finding one for himself, too. The morning sun poured through the windows in soft golden sheets, casting warm light across the penthouse. Jerome awoke not to silence, but to the smell of eggs and the faint sound of humming. It took him a moment to register. It wasn't a dream. He walked into the kitchen barefoot, rubbing his eyes, and there she was, Sarah cooking at the stove with her back turned, hair pulled into a bun, wearing one of his oversized flannel shirts. Anna sat at the counter, legs swinging, feeding Elijah tiny bites of mashed banana from a plastic spoon. Morning, Jerome said, his voice still husky from sleep. Sarah turned and gave a small smile. Thought we'd let you sleep. You look like you needed it. Anna waved. Mama made eggs the way Grandma used to. Burn a little. Jerome chuckled and grabbed a mug. Sounds perfect. They ate together again. No ceremony, just warmth. Sarah's hands were steadier today, her eyes less distant. Jerome noticed she'd showered, and her skin had a bit more color. He saw something fragile but real progress. After breakfast, Jerome pulled out a manila folder from his briefcase and handed it to Sarah. What's this? She asked. A few options, he said. Transitional housing programs I researched. Some with therapy, job placement, childcare. Sarah opened the folder slowly, scanning the pages. These look expensive. They are, he admitted, but I'll cover the cost, at least for the first 6 months. She set the folder down. You can't keep doing this. I can and I will until you tell me not to. Her hands clenched. I don't want Anna to grow up thinking people like you are magic, that someone will always come save her. She won't, Jerome said firmly, because she's already saving herself. Every day she fights to stay kind in a world that's tried to break her. That's strength, not fantasy. Sarah looked away, swallowing hard. I still don't know how to be part of anything. You're already part of something, he said. This, right here. A soft knock at the door startled them all. Jerome checked the peephole and opened it cautiously. A tall, broad-shouldered man in a charcoal suit stood on the other side. Mike Sandler, Jerome said. Didn't expect you today. Mike stepped in and tipped his head towards Sarah. Just thought I'd check in. Make sure everyone's okay. Sarah stiffened. You're a cop? Was, he said, holding up both hands. I'm not here to interrogate. I'm here because I know what falling through the cracks looks like. Anna peeked out from behind her mother, holding Elijah. Mike crouched down. Hey, kiddo, you're tougher than most grown-ups I know. Anna beamed. Mike straightened. Listen, Jerome, I got wind of something this morning. Some local outreach volunteer reported a man asking about Sarah and the kids. Jerome's brow furrowed. Who? Didn't leave a name. Just said he was looking for a woman with a baby and a girl. Said something about debts. Sarah went pale. Oh, God. Jerome looked at her. Sarah? She closed her eyes. His name's Darnell, Elijah's father. He was in and out of jail. When I got pregnant, he vanished. But after Elijah was born, he showed up again. Mean, He said if I didn't pay him back for his trouble, he'd take the baby. Jerome's voice darkened. He threatened you? Multiple times. I kept moving, hiding. I thought he forgot about us. Mike's voice was firm. If he's asking around, we need to file something. A restraining order. At least get you on the record. Sarah nodded, her voice shaking. Okay, but I don't want Anna scared. She's been through enough. Jerome knelt beside Anna. Did you hear what we said? Anna nodded slowly. It's okay to be scared, he said gently. But you're safe here, and we're going to keep you that way. She clutched his sleeve. Promise? He looked her in the eyes. Promise. That afternoon, Sarah and Mike went to the precinct to file the paperwork. Jerome stayed behind with the kids. They built another pillow fort, watched old cartoons, and Jerome even managed to make grilled cheese without burning it this time. But his mind kept circling the same thought. Safety wasn't just warmth and food. It was protection from the shadows people carried with them. And Sarah's past had just knocked on their door. When Sarah returned, she looked tired but relieved. It's done, she said. They'll process it tomorrow. Jerome nodded. You did the right thing. That night, after Anna went to bed, Sarah and Jerome sat on the balcony. The city stretched before them, glittering and oblivious. I used to think being strong meant staying invisible, Sarah said quietly. Keeping your head down, not asking for help. What do you think now? That maybe strength is letting someone see you when you're broken. Jerome didn't speak, just listened. I used to sleep with one arm around Anna and one hand on a broken beer bottle, she added. I was always ready to fight, even when there was nothing left to protect. You're not in that world anymore, Jerome said. But what if it follows me? She whispered. Then we face it together. She looked at him. You're not afraid of it? I'm afraid of failing her, he said. And you? Sarah reached over and placed her hand over his, not as a gesture of romance, but recognition, trust, the quiet beginning of something healing. You're not failing, she said. For the first time in years, Jerome believed it. Even with the threat looming, even with the past clawing at their doorstep, he believed it. Because this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about rebuilding. Together, the next morning, Jerome rose early. The sun hadn't yet cracked the skyline, and the apartment was still shrouded in a comforting hush. He padded quietly into the kitchen, brewed a pot of coffee, and watched the dark clouds roll over the city. There was a storm coming. In the distance, thunder rumbled faintly like a warning. Sarah joined him a little later, wearing the same oversized flannel shirt, her hair still damp from the shower. She looked stronger today, less like a ghost, more like the mother Anna had described in her drawings. Coffee, Jerome offered. She nodded. Please. Strong. They sat in silence for a while, sipping from matching mugs, watching the sky turn from charcoal to deep gray. Neither spoke of Darnell, but he was there between them, in the quiet, in the air. Jerome broke the silence. Mike's friend from the precinct called me last night. The restraining order will be active by noon. That's something, Sarah nodded. But it doesn't stop someone like Darnell from showing up anyway. No, Jerome agreed, but it gives us leverage. Legal ground to stand on if he does. She stared into her coffee. He's not like most men. He doesn't care about rules. Jerome reached across the table, resting his hand lightly over hers. If he comes near you, he'll have to go through me. And I don't care what kind of man he thinks he is. Sarah gave a tight smile. You talk like someone who's never been hit in the face. Do boardroom brawls count? She laughed. A real one this time, light and raspy, but full. It was the sound of someone remembering how. Later that morning, Sarah and Anna went down to the nearby community center. Jerome had arranged for a counselor to meet with them privately, a woman who'd worked with survivors of domestic trauma. He stayed behind with Elijah, who had begun teething and required near-constant distraction, while Elijah gnawed on a cold, teething ring. Jerome answered emails, scheduled a few business calls for the following week, and tried to pretend life was normal. But every few minutes, he found himself glancing toward the penthouse elevator, waiting for it to bring them home. Then, just before noon, the building security desk buzzed. "Mr. Carter," the voice crackled through the intercom. "There's a man downstairs asking for Sarah. Says he's her husband. Should we send him up?" Jerome's blood went cold. "Hold him there," he said. "Do not let him leave. I'm on my way." He grabbed his coat and raced to the private elevator, his mind running ahead of him, already building scenarios, exit strategies, possible outcomes. When the doors opened to the lobby, Jerome stepped out and saw him. Darnell stood by the front entrance, hands tucked in his hoodie, eyes scanning the marble lobby like a predator casing his next meal. He was tall, lean, with a smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes. Jerome walked straight toward him. "You're trespassing." Darnell looked him up and down. "You must be the new boyfriend. I'm the man who's going to make sure you don't get near Sarah or those kids." Darnell snorted. "I just want to talk to her. You lost that right a long time ago." Jerome noticed two security guards inching closer, sensing tension. "I'm not here to fight," Darnell said, raising his hands. "I just want what's mine." "They're not yours," Jerome snapped. "They're not property. And if you take one step toward that elevator, I'll make sure you leave here in cuffs." Darnell's eyes narrowed. "You think your money makes you invincible?" "No," Jerome said coolly. "But it makes me hard to ignore. And I've got more than enough of it to keep you out of their lives for good." For a beat, Darnell didn't move. Then he laughed, sharp and bitter. "You're playing hero, huh? Big man saving the poor little family." "I'm not playing anything," Jerome said. "I'm standing between a threat and the people I care about. You should leave. Now, before you give me a reason to escalate this." Darnell stared him down for another long second. Then, with a shrug, he turned and walked toward the exit. "Tell her," he said over his shoulder, "this ain't over." Jerome watched him disappear down the sidewalk before turning to the security guard. "I want a full description logged. Camera footage archived. If he shows up again, call the police immediately." Back in the penthouse, Jerome barely had time to collect himself before the elevator chimed again. Sarah and Anna stepped in, their faces flushed from the cold. Anna carried a paper butterfly she'd made at the center. Sarah saw Jerome's face and stopped short. "What happened?" "He came," Jerome said quietly. "Downstairs. Said he wanted to talk to you." Sarah went pale. "Did Anna?" "She never saw him. She's safe. You both are. He's gone now." Sarah sat on the couch, her hands shaking. "He always does this. Disappears for years and then comes back like a bad dream." "He's not going to get near you again," Jerome said. "Not while I'm here." She looked at him with a mix of gratitude and guilt. "You didn't sign up for this." "I didn't have to," he said. "I chose to." Anna climbed into her mother's lap, showing her the butterfly. "Look, Mama, they said it means new beginnings." Sarah stroked her daughter's hair. "It's beautiful." Jerome watched them, his heart tightening. He'd faced boardroom battles, tech mergers, and economic downturns. But nothing had ever mattered as much as this, keeping this fragile family from breaking apart. Outside, the clouds finally broke open and rain began to fall, soft and steady. Inside, Jerome pulled the sketch from his wallet, the one with the stick figures under the word trying. He set it on the counter where they all could see it, because in the face of threats, fear, and storms past, the most powerful thing they could do now was keep trying. Together, the rain continued all through the night, hammering softly against the wide glass windows of the penthouse. Inside, the atmosphere was subdued, fragile. Jerome made spaghetti for dinner, and Anna insisted on helping, tossing noodles with more enthusiasm than skill. Her laughter, bright and real, was the only thing that seemed untouched by the storm that had entered their lives again. Sarah barely ate. She sat at the table, fork in hand, eyes distant, like she was there and not there all at once. Jerome noticed how she flinched at sudden sounds, how her fingers curled slightly around the edge of her plate as if preparing for impact after Anna and Elijah were asleep. Jerome found her standing at the window, arms folded, staring out into the city below. She didn't turn when he approached. "I can't breathe when I think about him," she said softly. "I keep waiting for a knock, for him to grab Anna, to hurt Elijah or you." "He won't get close," Jerome said. "Security's been doubled. Mike's watching every corner. We're protected." She shook her head. "No lock or camera can stop a man like Darnell if he wants something. He's not afraid of rules." Jerome stepped beside her. "Then we give him something else to fear." She looked at him sharply. "You're talking like a man who's never been afraid." "I've been afraid plenty," Jerome replied, "but never doing the right thing." Sarah's voice cracked. "But what if I'm the one who ruins this? I've ruined everything else." Jerome reached out, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "You didn't ruin anything. You survived, and now you're healing. That's not failure. That's courage." She turned to him, tears brimming. "Why do you care so much?" He paused. "Because I see who you are, not just the wounds or the history. I see the mother, the woman who kept her kids alive when no one else would. I care because your strength reminds me what kind of man I want to be." She exhaled shakily and leaned into him for a moment, just enough to steady herself. The next day, Jerome drove Sarah and Anna to a group therapy session at the community center. Sarah had agreed reluctantly, but Jerome knew it was necessary. Healing wasn't a solo act. It needed witnesses, support, and sometimes mirrors. While they were gone, Jerome took Elijah to the park, wrapped snugly in a weatherproof sling. The sky was finally clear, the air crisp. He sat on a bench near the playground, watching other parents and nannies push children on swings and chase them through. Piles of wet leaves. A woman with gray hair and warm eyes approached, smiling at Elijah. "Yours?" she asked. Jerome nodded, even though it wasn't exactly true. "Sort of." She chuckled. "They change you, don't they?" "Yeah," Jerome said, bouncing Elijah gently. "They really do." She sat beside him. "I raised 3 boys. Lost 1 in Iraq. The other 2 still call me every Sunday. Kids grow, but the worry doesn't stop." Jerome glanced at her. "Does the fear ever go away?" She looked at him, her expression soft. "No, but the love gets louder." That stayed with him all day. Later that evening, Sarah returned from her session, quieter but lighter. She didn't say much, but Jerome noticed how her posture had changed. Still guarded, but less burdened. Anna made hot cocoa for everyone, insisting on extra marshmallows. That night, while Sarah bathed Elijah and Anna colored at the table, Jerome sat in his study with Mike on the phone. "I've got news," Mike said. "We've been tracking Darnell since his visit. He's been asking around shelters, mostly downtown. Looks like he's staying at a flop house near Crenshaw." "Is he armed?" "No confirmation yet, but his record's not clean. You want to talk to someone at the DA's office." Jerome hesitated. "No, not yet. I don't want to drag Sarah through court unless we have to." Mike sighed. "Then we wait, but we stay ready." Jerome hung up and returned to the living room. Anna had fallen asleep on the couch, her head nestled against a throw pillow. Sarah sat cross-legged on the floor, rocking Elijah, who was finally quiet after a fussy hour. "I heard from Mike," Jerome said. She didn't look up. "And he's watching Darnell. We're safe for now." Sarah nodded. "Thank you." Jerome hesitated. "Sarah, have you ever thought about going back? Not to him, but to somewhere that's yours? A place where you're not looking over your shoulder every second." "I used to," she said softly, "but now I don't know what that place looks like." He crouched beside her. "Maybe it's not a place. Maybe it's a decision to stop running, to rebuild." She looked up at him. "With you?" With whoever you choose, Jerome said. But I'll be here, however long you need. She smiled faintly, brushing Elijah's curls. You're not like anyone I've ever met. Good, he said, because you deserve better than what you've had. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city shimmered in puddles and glowed under the moonlight. Inside, for the first time in weeks, Sarah leaned back against the couch, exhaled deeply, and said 3 words she hadn't spoken in years. I feel safe. And for Jerome, that was more valuable than any deal he'd ever closed, any title he'd ever earned. Real safety was rare, and now it was theirs. The days that followed settled into a rhythm, quiet, cautious, and unexpectedly warm. Jerome found himself adapting to the presence of children in his home with surprising ease. He no longer flinched at the sound of a bottle crashing to the floor or Elijah's sudden wails echoing through the hallways. There was something grounding about their chaos, something real. Sarah began to emerge in the shell. She had worn like armor. She took longer walks with Anna, even signed up for a cooking class offered through the community center. Jerome helped her apply for a job at a nonprofit cafe that hired single mothers. And when she got the interview, they celebrated with dollar store cupcakes that Anna decorated with sprinkles and too much frosting. Each day felt like a small victory, a step away from the cliff, a step closer to steady ground. But dusk brought with it a different kind of quiet, one that hummed with unspoken questions, with fears Sarah never quite shook off. Jerome noticed how she checked the locks twice before bed, how she kept her phone charged and near, how she still jumped at sudden knocks on the door. And then, one evening just after dinner, the knock came. It was soft at first, 3 taps, polite, measured. Jerome was in the kitchen rinsing dishes when he froze. Sarah, who had been reading to Anna on the couch, looked up sharply. Her eyes met his. Another knock, firmer this time. Jerome wiped his hands and stepped to the intercom. He pressed a button. Yes. A gruff voice came through. Delivery for Sarah Thompson. Jerome's brows furrowed. We didn't order anything. There was a pause. Then, almost inaudibly, you might not have... Jerome's blood ran cold. He muted the speaker and turned to Sarah. Stay inside. Lock the door to the bedroom. Now. Sarah scooped Elijah from his crib, grabbed Anna's hand, and rushed down the hallway without a word. Jerome watched her disappear, then turned back to the intercom. Leave it at the front desk, he said firmly. I'll pick it up later. But when he checked the security camera feed, there was no delivery man, no uniform, just a figure in a dark hoodie standing by the elevator, back turned to the camera. Jerome called Mike immediately. He's here. You're sure? No delivery. Just a name he shouldn't know. I'll get a patrol car to the building now. Stay put. Jerome hung up and locked the front door with its secondary bolt. He went into his study, opened the drawer, and pulled out the pepper spray and stun baton he'd reluctantly purchased a week before. He hated weapons, but he hated helplessness more. Down the hallway, he heard the quiet sound of Anna whispering to her mother. Elijah was fussing again. The air was thick, heavy, like the moments before a storm breaks. 15 minutes later, a knock at the door startled him again. But this one came in an officer's voice. Mr. Carter, LAPD. Jerome opened the door cautiously. A uniformed officer stood with Mike beside him. Mike's face was tight. We didn't catch him. The guy slipped out the back stairwell before the lobby guards could block him. Jerome's jaw clenched. He knew her name. Most likely, Mike nodded grimly. He's escalating. The officer took statements while Mike walked the perimeter of the penthouse, checking all access points, verifying footage. When they were done, Jerome stood with Mike in the hallway outside the apartment. We need to consider relocation, Mike said. At least temporarily. He's hunting now, you saw that. Jerome exhaled. She just started to feel safe. If we move her again, it's another crack in the foundation. Mike put a hand on his shoulder. And if we don't, it could be a hole she doesn't crawl out of. Jerome returned inside and found Sarah still huddled with the kids, her face pale but composed. "He's gone," Jerome said softly. "But we need to talk about the next steps." Sarah stood slowly, rocking Elijah in her arms. "He won't stop. I know him. Mike thinks we should move you somewhere safe where he can't find you." Sarah shook her head. "I'm tired of running." "I know," Jerome said gently. "But it's not just about you anymore." Anna looked up, eyes wide. "Are we leaving?" Jerome knelt beside her. "Not forever. Just until it's safe again." Anna's voice was small. "Will there be a kitchen?" He smiled. "A real one. And I promise we'll bring the coloring books." Sarah looked around the apartment, the place that had become more than just a shelter. It had been a beginning, a home, but survival meant sacrifice. She nodded. "Okay, let's do it." They moved the next day. Mike arranged for a safe house on the outskirts of Pasadena, gated, discreet, and monitored 24/7. Jerome paid 6 months in advance. No questions asked. The house was small but clean, with a sunny porch and a fenced backyard where Anna could chase butterflies again. Jerome stayed for the first few nights, sleeping on the couch, helping them settle in. Sarah took to planting small potted herbs by the windowsill. Anna arranged her books in a neat row under her bed. Elijah just seemed blissfully unaware of the changes, as long as someone held him when he cried. On the third night, Sarah sat on the porch while Jerome fixed a broken screen door. The stars were out, quiet and far away. "I thought when I left the first time that was the end," Sarah said quietly. "But leaving isn't the same as escaping. Sometimes it just delays the pain." Jerome nodded. "But now you're not alone. That makes all the difference." She looked at him. "Do you ever regret it? Taking us in?" He leaned back against the railing. "Never. Even now. Especially now." She smiled, small and true. "You saved us." He shook his head. "No, I just gave you a place to land. You're the one who learned how to fly." And somewhere in the dark, past the fear, past the threats, they began again, not with certainty, not with safety carved in stone, but with resolve and hope. The safe house in Pasadena sat on a quiet cul-de-sac, tucked beneath overgrown sycamores and hidden from the rush of the world. The neighborhood breathed slow and easy, the kind of place where mailboxes still creaked, wind chimes sang without rhythm, and neighbors waved from porches without asking too many questions. For the first time in months, Sarah felt like she could exhale for longer than a minute. Each morning, Jerome drove out to check on them. He brought groceries, updates for Mike, fresh books for Anna, and whenever possible, muffins from a nearby bakery that made everything taste like it had a story. The days passed gently, if cautiously. There was no sign of Darnell. The air began to soften around the family again. Sarah spent hours in the backyard, pruning dead rose bushes left by the previous tenant. She had no idea what she was doing, but the work felt necessary, like her hands needed something living to fix. Anna, ever curious and bright, had begun journaling. Sarah found her one afternoon on the porch, legs swinging as she scribbled into a spiral notebook with a blue gel pen. "What are you writing?" Sarah asked. "A book," Anna said proudly, "about a girl who lives in a house that's not hers but makes it hers anyway." Sarah blinked. "That sounds real." Anna shrugged. "I just want people to know it's okay to be scared and still be strong." Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead, her heart aching with pride and sorrow. "You're already the strongest girl I know." That night, Sarah found Jerome in the kitchen, fixing a leaky pipe under the sink. She looked at him, his white shirt slightly damp, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows. "Everything okay?" he asked. She leaned against the doorframe. "You ever think about how strange this is?" He wiped his hands on a dish towel. "You mean me turning into your handyman?" She smiled. "No, the way things happened, the way you showed up." Jerome stood and crossed the room. "It doesn't feel strange to me. It feels like I was supposed to be there, at that store on that day." Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. You saved Anna's life. She saved mine, he said quietly. There was a pause. Then, almost shyly, she asked, Why haven't you ever asked for more? Jerome tilted his head. More from me, from this. He took a breath. Because healing doesn't happen on someone else's timeline. I'm not here to fix you, Sarah. I'm here to witness your strength. She didn't respond right away, but her eyes shimmered with something deeper than gratitude, something like belief. Later that evening, Mike called. We got something, he said. Darnell tried using Sarah's old ID at a check-cashing place. Idiot left fingerprints. Jerome sat up. And we're filing warrants. Should be approved within 24 hours. He's still local. Jerome relayed the news to Sarah, who was rocking Elijah by the window. She froze. They're arresting him? That's the plan. She looked down at Elijah, whose small fingers curled around her necklace. What if he doesn't go quietly? Then he learns that actions have consequences, Jerome said. For once, Sarah turned to face him, the porch light catching her expression, resolute, defiant, afraid. I want to be there. What? I want to see him arrested. I want to face him. Jerome stepped forward. That's not necessary. We can. It is, she cut in. I need to look him in the eyes and tell him he doesn't owe me any more. Not my fear, not my silence. Jerome searched her face and saw no hesitation. All right, he said. We'll talk to Mike. The next day, Mike arranged for a coordinated pickup. They knew Darnell's location, a rundown bar in East L.A. He went there every Thursday night to hustle pool and run his mouth. It was risky, but Sarah insisted. Jerome didn't argue. That evening, they left Anna with a neighbor, an older woman named Mrs. Gonzalez who had taken a quiet shine to her, and drove downtown. Sarah wore a plain black hoodie, no makeup, her hair pulled tight. She looked like steel. They waited in an unmarked SUV a block away from the bar. Mike sat in the driver's seat, eyes on a monitor fed by a drone camera nearby. There he is, Mike said, outside, smoking. Sarah's fist clenched. Jerome touched her shoulder. You okay? No, she whispered. But I'm ready. When the officers moved in, it was swift. Darnell didn't even finish a cigarette before he was pinned, cuffed, and read his rights. He spat curses, kicked, threatened everyone around him. And then he saw her. Sarah stepped from the vehicle, her face calm. You, Darnell snarled. You lying? She stepped closer, just within earshot. You don't scare me anymore. He twisted, trying to lunge. The officers held him back easily. Sarah kept her voice steady. You'll never touch my children. You'll never steal another breath from my life. It ends here. Darnell snarled, eyes filled with hate. She didn't flinch. Mike led her back to the car. Jerome followed, silent. Inside the SUV, Sarah stared ahead, breathing slow and deep. That was brave, Jerome said. She shook her head. That was necessary. And as they drove away into the night that somehow felt lighter, Sarah leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes. She wasn't smiling, but something inside her had shifted. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was reclaiming, piece by piece, breath by breath. And for the first time, the world didn't feel like a trap. It felt like hers. The house in Pasadena felt different after Darnell's arrest. There was no official announcement, no balloons or banners. Yet something in the air had shifted. Like the windows had finally been opened and the years of stale fear were drifting out with the breeze. Sarah stood barefoot in the kitchen the morning after, stirring oatmeal while humming a lullaby she used to sing to Anna. Elijah sat in his high chair, slapping his hands against a tray, his gummy smile lighting up the room. Anna wandered in with a stack of construction paper and a mission to make a certificate of bravery for her mom. Jerome arrived with fresh groceries and a newspaper tucked under one arm. He paused at the front door, taking in the sight of the family through the open window. For a brief, aching moment, it felt like something close to a dream he'd been afraid to name. Inside, Sarah greeted him with a small, knowing smile. "You always bring blueberries when you're trying to distract me." Jerome grinned. "I bring blueberries because they're good in pancakes. Distraction is a bonus." He placed the paper on the table, folded open to the second page where a small headline read, "Fugitive apprehended in East L.A. Repeat offender in custody." Sarah didn't even look at it. "I don't need to read it," she said. "He's not the headline anymore. I am." Jerome nodded, his chest tightening. "You're right. You always were." After breakfast, they all went for a walk, Jerome pushing Elijah in a stroller, Anna skipping ahead, and Sarah walking slowly beside him, the sun warming her shoulders. She wore a loose cardigan, jeans, and no trace of the armor she used to carry in her posture. They passed a row of townhouses where an elderly couple waved from their porch. Anna ran up to pet their tiny dog, and Sarah laughed when the pup tried to lick her face. "This," Sarah said quietly, "is the first day I've woken up and not checked every window first." "That's something to celebrate," Jerome replied. They stopped by a small community park with worn benches and a half-rusted swing set. Anna raced toward the swings, calling for Jerome to push her. As he obliged, Sarah sat on a bench and watched him with a look somewhere between gratitude and disbelief. "Do you ever worry," she asked softly, "that this is too good? That it's all just a moment before something breaks again?" Jerome slowed the swing slightly. "I used to think that, but now I believe in moments like these because they're real and we fought for them." Sarah nodded. "Fighting is easier when you know someone's in your corner." She didn't say thank you. She didn't have to. Later that afternoon, Jerome surprised Sarah with a simple folder. Inside was a lease agreement with her name at the top, the house in Pasadena, in full. "You bought this?" she whispered. "I did," he said, "and I'm signing it over to you. It's yours, legally, no strings." Sarah stared at the document, her fingers trembling. "I can't take this." "Yes, you can, because this isn't charity. It's restoration. You're rebuilding. You need a foundation." Tears filled her eyes. "I've never owned anything, not even a car in my name." "Now you own a future," he said softly. Anna ran in then, holding her certificate of bravery. Glitter stuck to her fingers. "Mama, I finished it. You're the bravest girl in the whole world." Sarah knelt down, hugging her daughter tightly. Jerome stepped back, giving them space, his heart heavier and fuller than it had ever been. That evening, they had a small dinner celebration, just the four of them. Sarah lit a candle at the center of the table, not for ceremony, but for meaning, for the light. After dessert, Anna whispered to Jerome, "Do you think Mama will ever marry you?" Jerome choked on his water. "That's not up to me, sweetheart." "She should," Anna said with a sage nod. "You're both bossy and you both like soup. That's true love." Jerome laughed until tears formed in the corners of his eyes. Later, after the kids were asleep, Sarah joined him on the porch. "I heard what she said." She teased gently. "Kids say the wildest things." "She's not wrong, though." Jerome turned to her. "You don't owe me anything, Sarah. You never have." "I know," she said. "That's why it means more." The silence between them was no longer heavy. It was rich, comfortable. "Do you believe in second chances?" she asked. "I believe in people who fight for them," he said. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Maybe I do too." The night air was cool, the stars scattered above like quiet witnesses. And for the first time in a long, broken road, there was nothing chasing them. Only the quiet, only the promise of what might come next. The morning after their porch conversation, Sarah woke before sunrise. The house was still cloaked in shadow, and the only sounds were Elijah's soft breathing and the ticking of the old kitchen clock. She padded barefoot into the kitchen and stood by the sink, watching the sky begin its slow shift from black to pale blue. For the first time in years, She wasn't afraid of the day beginning. But something lingered, a memory she hadn't invited, pressing itself into the quiet. She made coffee, sat at the table, and opened her journal. The pages were scattered with notes, fragments of thoughts she'd scribbled since arriving in Pasadena, some hopeful, some raw. Today, her hand moved slowly, writing a name she hadn't spoken in years. Tamika, her younger sister. The last time they had spoken was the night before Sarah left home for good, when she was 19 and pregnant, unsure and alone. Tamika had begged her stay, but Sarah had already packed her fear and pride into a backpack and walked out into a world that didn't care if she survived. She hadn't heard from Tamika since. The years passed, life twisted and buckled, and still, that thread pulled at her, frayed but not broken. Jerome came in quietly, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "You okay?" Sarah nodded. "I was thinking about my sister. I didn't know you had one." "I don't. Not really. I haven't seen her in 15 years. Last I heard, she was still in Sacramento, working at a library maybe. She always loved books." Jerome poured himself coffee. "Do you want to find her?" Sarah hesitated. "I'm not sure. What would I even say? Sorry I disappeared. Here's my trauma and 2 kids." He leaned against the counter. "Maybe you just say, 'I missed you.'" That afternoon, while Elijah napped and Anna played with sidewalk chalk in the driveway, Jerome made a few discreet phone calls. By evening, he had a name, an address, and a phone number. He handed the note to Sarah. "She's in Oakland now. Community college librarian. Same last name. It's her." Sarah stared at the paper. "I don't know if I'm ready." "There's no deadline," Jerome said. "Just possibility." She tucked the note into her journal. "Thank you." That night, Sarah didn't sleep much. She lay awake, watching the ceiling fan spin and listening to the quiet hum of the house. Memories came in waves. Fights with their mother, Tamika reading fairy tales under the covers, their shared dreams of leaving their neighborhood behind. In the morning, she called. The phone rang 3 times. "Hello?" A soft, unsure voice answered. Sarah's throat tightened. "Tamika?" A pause, then a sharp inhale. "Sarah?" Her voice cracked. "Yeah, it's me." The silence on the other end was so long. Sarah thought the call had dropped. Then she heard the sound of someone trying not to cry. "I thought you were dead," Tamika whispered. "I looked for you for years." "I'm sorry," Sarah said, choking on the words. "I should have called. I should have—" "No," Tamika said firmly. "You left because you had to. You did what you had to do. I was angry, but I never stopped loving you." Sarah sank to the kitchen floor, tears streaming. "I have kids now. A girl named Anna, a baby boy, Elijah, and I'm safe. I'm finally safe." "I want to meet them," Tamika said, "when you're ready." "I think I'm ready now." A week later, they made the trip. The drive to Oakland was long, but the kids were troopers. Anna sang half the way, and Elijah slept most of it. Jerome rented a modest Airbnb near the college campus, letting Sarah set the pace. When Tamika arrived, she wore the same wide eyes and hesitant smile Sarah remembered from childhood. Her hair was grayer now, her frame a little thinner, but the energy was the same, gentle, fierce, familiar. The reunion was quiet. No dramatic tears, just long hugs, trembling hands, and whispered apologies passed between sisters who had survived separate storms. Anna took to Tamika immediately, proudly showing her sketches and telling wild tales about Mr. Jerome who saved us from the bad guy. Elijah clung to Sarah but eventually warmed up, giggling when Tamika made silly faces. Over dinner, stories spilled like wine. Childhood mischief, hard years, dreams deferred and rediscovered. Jerome mostly listened, watching the way Sarah came alive in her sister's presence, her laughter freer, her shoulders no longer heavy with apology. Later, Tamika pulled Sarah aside. "You're stronger than I ever imagined." Sarah shrugged. I didn't have a choice. Yes, you did, Tamika said. You chose not to break. They stood there in the kitchen, two women who had carried grief in silence, now sharing aloud. And something inside Sarah softened. A knot she hadn't known was still clenched. I want Anna and Elijah to have a family, she said. A real one. Tamika smiled. They already do. Before they left Oakland, Tamika gave Anna a children's book with a handwritten note on the inside cover. For the bravest girl I know, may your story always be heard. The next morning, on the drive back, Anna sat quietly in the back seat, flipping through the book. Do we have to wait a long time to see Auntie Tamika again? She asked. No, Sarah said, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. Not anymore. And as the freeway stretched ahead of them, lined with sunlight and promise, Sarah knew this chapter wasn't about endings. It was about stitching the past to the present, about weaving a tapestry from pain, forgiveness, and new beginnings. It was about reclaiming not just safety, but family. And family, she realized, didn't need to be perfect. It just needed to be real. It was a week after returning from Oakland when the letter arrived. Sarah found it tucked between bills and grocery flyers, its envelope plain and unmarked except for familiar handwriting she hadn't seen since childhood. No return address, no hints. Just her name written with the gentle curves of someone who once practiced cursive on the back of church bulletins. She didn't open it right away. Instead, she carried it inside, set it on the kitchen table, and stared at it while Elijah babbled from his high chair, and Anna painted a picture of their family with stick figures and a son that took up half the page. Jerome noticed her stillness when he walked in. Everything all right? She slid the envelope toward him. It's from my mother. Jerome raised his eyebrows but said nothing. I haven't heard from her in over a decade, Sarah whispered. Last I knew, she was in Louisiana. She always said I shamed her when I left, that I deserved the life I chose. Jerome sat across from her. You don't have to open it. I know, she said, but I think I want to, after the kids were in bed. Sarah curled up on the porch with a blanket and a cup of tea. Jerome sat beside her, silent and patient, as she broke the seal and unfolded the thin, lined paper. Her mother's handwriting was smaller now, shakier. Dear Sarah, if you're reading this, it means the number I found for you is real. I don't know if you'll ever write back. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. I haven't earned that much. But I wanted to say I'm sorry. For the yelling, for the judgment, for letting my pride speak louder than my love. I lost your sister, and then I lost you. And now, every night I sit on this porch and wonder the silence I hear is your voice refusing to call. I want to believe you found peace, that you found love, that you became the mother I never was. I want to believe you forgave me, even if you never say it out loud. Love, always, Mama. Sarah read it twice, then a third time. By the end, her hands trembled. Jerome reached for her hand. Are you okay? She nodded, blinking back tears. I don't know what to feel. I thought I buried her voice a long time ago, but here it is, still alive in my head. She sounds like she's trying. Sarah gave a bitter laugh. Trying now, after everything. Jerome didn't argue. He let the moment breathe. I don't know if I can forgive her, she said quietly. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting, Jerome said. It's about releasing yourself from the weight. She exhaled, staring into the dark yard. I'll write back. Not today, but soon. The following morning, Sarah surprised Jerome by asking if they could take the kids into the city. She wanted to visit a museum, specifically the African American History and Culture exhibit at the Downtown Cultural Center. It's time Anna sees where she comes from, Sarah said. The good and the hard. They spent the afternoon exploring the exhibit. Anna asked 100 questions, most of them thoughtful, a few hilarious. Elijah giggled whenever he saw a photo of children. But it was Sarah who lingered the longest. At one display, a worn pair of shoes sat behind glass. A black and white photo beside them showed a child marching with her mother during a civil rights protest in the 1960s. She was only 8, Sarah whispered. Look at her face, like she knew the world would try to silence her, and she still stood tall. Anna stood beside her, looking up. She looks brave. She was, Sarah said, and so are you. They moved onto a wall filled with framed letters, poems, and journal entries written by women during times of deep struggle. Freedom marches, riots, moments of quiet resistance. Sarah read one aloud, her voice catching. Even in the fire, I still believe in blooming. Even in the silence, I still sing my name. She turned to Jerome, who had been watching her with reverence. I want to write something like that. Not for the museum, for Anna, for Elijah, so they always know where we came from. You already are, he said, every day. Back at home that evening, Sarah sat down at the dining table and began to write, not to her mother, not yet, but to her children, to Anna and Elijah. There are things I haven't told you, not because I'm ashamed, but because they hurt. I want you to know I've walked through fire. I've been broken, afraid, alone, but I never stopped loving you. Even before you were born, you were the reason I kept breathing. I didn't grow up in a house filled with warmth, but I've learned to build warmth piece by piece. I've learned to trust and to fight for peace. You deserve a world better than mine, and I'll spend every breath I have trying to make it so. With all my heart, your mama. When she was done, she folded the letter, slipped it into an envelope, and placed it in a small wooden box she'd found at a thrift store the week before. She'd filled the box with more letters over time. Truths, memories, reminders. Because stories weren't just passed in museums. They were passed in whispers, in words, in the brave act of telling. And for the first time, Sarah wasn't just surviving her past. She was reclaiming it one letter at a time. A few weeks after their visit to the museum, Sarah received an unexpected email from the community center. It was short and to the point. We're hosting a community panel on overcoming adversity and rebuilding after trauma. We'd love for you to speak. At first, she laughed, not out of joy, but disbelief. Me? On a panel. Jerome looked up from the newspaper. Why not you? I'm not a speaker, she said. I'm just figuring things out. I don't even know what I'd say. You'd say the truth, Jerome replied, and that's more powerful than any script. Sarah let the idea sit with her for a few days. The thought of standing in front of strangers made her stomach churn, but the idea of sharing her story, of maybe helping someone else, pulled at her. One evening, she sat at her desk with a blank notepad and wrote at the top, "What I know now." She didn't write a speech. She wrote a story. The night of the panel came quickly. The event took place in the high school auditorium, modest but packed. Folding chairs stretched across the floor and soft lights hung overhead. On stage sat 4 chairs and a table with water bottles. The other speakers were already seated. An addiction counselor, a formerly incarcerated youth mentor, and a domestic violence survivor turned therapist. Sarah felt out of place in her simple dress, her hands trembling slightly as she walked on stage. But when the host introduced her, a mother, a fighter, a woman rebuilding one brick at a time, the applause surprised her. She took a deep breath and began. I used to think surviving was enough, that waking up each day and not falling apart meant I was doing okay. But then I had my daughter, and surviving wasn't enough anymore. She needed more. She deserved more. The auditorium grew still. I left a man who made me believe I was nothing. I lived under a bridge. I begged for milk. And one day, a stranger didn't turn away. He saw me, not just the dirt on my clothes or the panic in my eyes, but me. She glanced at Jerome in the audience. He gave a small nod, steady and proud. I've been afraid every single day since. But I keep choosing to show up anyway. For my kids, for myself, for every woman who thinks she's too broken to begin again. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment before erupting in applause. People stood, some cried. A few came up afterward to thank her, to hug her, to tell her that her story gave them something they thought they'd lost. Hope. One woman clutched her hand and whispered, "I'm leaving him tonight because of you." Sarah held her close, whispering back, "You're not alone." After the panel, Jerome drove her home. The windows rolled down, the spring air warm and full of distant music from someone's backyard barbecue. "You were incredible," he said. "I was terrified." "You didn't show it." She turned to him. "You were right. Telling the truth is powerful. I didn't do anything. You're the one who lived it." "No," she said softly. "You helped me remember I was worth living for." He reached for her hand at the red light. Back home, Anna greeted them in pajamas, waving a homemade sign that read, "Go home in glittery crayon." Elijah babbled from the playpen. Tamika, who had babysat for the evening, smiled from the kitchen. "I heard you were a hit," Tamika teased, handing Sarah a cup of tea. "I didn't faint. That's a win." They laughed together, and Sarah felt a glow in her chest, something deeper than happiness, something like peace. That night, after the kids were asleep, Sarah returned to her writing box. She pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and began another letter. "To the woman who finds this someday, maybe you're standing where I once stood, in a grocery store, a courtroom, a shelter. Maybe you're shaking with fear or shame or the quiet ache of being invisible. I see you. I was you. And I want you to know something no one told me. Your story is not over. You are not the sum of your wounds. You are not defined by who left or who hurt you. You are still whole, even in pieces. And somewhere out there, someone is waiting to hear your truth. Speak it with all my strength, Sarah." She sealed the letter and placed it beneath the others. The box was growing heavier, but so was her voice. And somewhere in the world, maybe that voice would become a light, just like someone had once been a light for her. The morning after the panel, Sarah found herself standing in the empty room at the back of the house, the one they'd used for storage since moving in. Sunlight filtered through the dusty blinds, casting long streaks across boxes marked miscellaneous and winter stuff. She stared at the space, imagining something different. A desk by the window, shelves lined with journals, maybe a bulletin board filled with ideas, dreams, fragments of the past turned into something new. Jerome found her there an hour later, sleeves rolled up, hair tied back, dragging an old filing cabinet across the floor. "Starting early? I'm making a writing room," she said, slightly breathless. "Or at least a quiet corner where the kids don't color on my papers." He grinned. "Need a hand?" Together they cleared the room, lifting, sorting, laughing when they uncovered a box of Christmas. Decorations Anna had labeled Santa stuff, not trash. By noon, the floor was clean and the walls bare. Sarah stood in the middle, hands on hips. "It's small, but it's mine." "You've earned it," Jerome said. "Want paint? Only if we can pick a real color, not just eggshell or sandstorm beige." They settled on a soft robin's egg blue, cheerful without being loud. Over the next few days, the room began to take shape. Tamika donated an old typewriter for decor, and Anna insisted on hanging one of her framed drawings for inspiration, she declared. Elijah contributed with crayon smudges on the baseboard, which Sarah decided to leave untouched. "It's part of the story," she said. On a rainy Friday afternoon, Sarah sat at her new desk, opened a fresh notebook, and began writing her story from the beginning. Not as a letter, not as a journal, but as a book. She wrote the first line carefully. "I was invisible before I became a mother. Then I realized I'd been seen all along by the wrong people." As the rain tapped gently against the window, she kept writing. The memories came in waves. The pain, yes, but also the strength. The moment she'd fought to protect Anna. The hunger, the fear, the day in the convenience store that changed everything. And Jerome, how a stranger's kindness could ripple so deeply that it rewrote a life. By the time dinner rolled around, she had written 6 pages. Not much, but enough. Enough to feel the shift. Enough to believe. At dinner, Jerome noticed her glow. "Productive day?" "Started the book," she said. It might take a year or 10, but I'm doing it. I'd read it in one sitting, he said. You have to say that. You're practically family. Jerome paused, his fork halfway to his mouth. Practically? Sarah arched an eyebrow. Depends. You planning to stick around? Depends, he said, mirroring her tone. You planning to kick me out? Anna giggled, clearly sensing the tension without understanding it. You two talk like characters in a movie. We're still figuring out the script, Sarah said, and Jerome smiled. That night, after the kids were tucked in and the house was quiet, Sarah walked into the kitchen and found Jerome wiping down the counter. I was thinking, she began, about what you said, about family. He turned to face her. I want you to stay, she said, not just for dinners and repairs. For all of it. Jerome searched her face, careful not to misread her. For real? He asked. For real? He stepped closer, slowly, giving her time to change her mind. But she didn't move. She didn't flinch. When he took her hand, it felt like the closing of one door and the opening of another, a different kind of chapter, one built not just on rescue, but on choice. They stood in the kitchen for a long time, no need for more words. Outside, the rain softened into mist, and inside, something settled. The next week, Sarah met with the director of the community center. We'd like to offer you a spot on our advisory board, the woman said. Your story struck a chord, and we think you can help shape our programs moving forward. Sarah blinked. I've never been on a board. You've lived more than half of us ever will, the director said. And you're honest. That's what people need. Sarah accepted, humbled and daunted, and walked home that evening feeling something new, a purpose that went beyond survival, beyond healing. When she told Jerome, he wrapped her in a proud embrace. Looks like you're officially a force of nature. I prefer force of nurture, she quipped. He laughed. Either way, remind me never to underestimate you again. Later, Sarah sat in her writing room, looking at the open pages of her book in progress. She reread her last sentence and added one more beneath it. I didn't just escape. I rebuilt, and now I help others do the same. She closed the notebook gently. It was still raining outside. But inside, every part of her felt rooted. No longer a woman defined by where she'd been, but by where she was going. The letter arrived with no warning. No return address again. But this time, it wasn't from her mother. The handwriting was harsher, slanted and hurried. Sarah recognized it instantly. She hadn't seen it since the day she left the courthouse years ago. Her hands shook as she tore it open. Sarah, I know what I did. I know there's no apology strong enough to fix it, but I'm trying. I've been sober for 6 months. I'm working a program. My sponsor says I have to make amends, not just for me, but for the people I hurt. I'm not asking for anything. Just wanted you to know I'm still alive, and I finally see it, what I became, what I did to you, to our kids. If you ever want to talk, here's a number. If not, I understand. Darnell. Sarah sat frozen. The letter felt like a crack in the foundation she'd spent years building, not wide enough to destroy anything, but deep enough to shake her. She walked into the yard, letting the cold air bite her skin. She didn't tell Jerome right away, not even when he found her sitting on the porch swinging with the letter clenched in her fist. He sat beside her in silence. Finally, she spoke. It's from Darnell. Jerome's jaw tightened. He's out. No, still in, but he's in recovery. Says he's clean. Says he's sorry. Jerome waited. How do you feel? I don't know, she said. Angry, relieved, disgusted, and somehow not surprised. You don't owe him anything, Jerome said gently. I know, she whispered, but part of me wants to hear it. Not for him. For me. You don't have to decide now. She nodded. I won't, but I won't ignore it either. That night, after the kids were asleep and the house was still, Sarah sat at her desk and wrote. Not a reply, but a letter she never intended to send. Darnell, you broke me. You broke things in me I didn't even know could crack. You made me question my worth, my strength, my voice. But I found all of it again without you, because of you maybe, but never with you. I don't need your apology to heal, but I hope for your own soul that you mean it. If you ever speak to Anna or Elijah, it will be because they choose to, not because I let you back in. You lost that right when you raised your fist instead of your heart. I forgive you because I want peace. But I won't forget and I won't go back. Sarah. She folded the letter and slipped it into the same box with the others. Another chapter written. Another page turned. A few days later, Sarah stood before her first advisory board meeting. It was held in a community space on the east side, where folding chairs were worn but welcoming and coffee came in mismatched mugs. The other board members, all older women, social workers, counselors, greeted her with warmth. They discussed upcoming projects, housing initiatives for women leaving abusive relationships, mentorship programs for teenage mothers, emergency food pantries. Sarah listened, took notes, then she raised her hand. I'd like to propose a writing workshop, she said, for survivors, a place where they can tell their stories, not just for healing, but to reclaim their narrative. The room quieted. One of the older women, Miss Linda, nodded slowly. That's powerful. What would you call it? Sarah thought for a moment, then said, Still Standing. The name stuck. Within weeks, flyers appeared at shelters and clinics. Still Standing. A free weekly writing circle for women reclaiming their voice. Sarah led the first session with trembling hands and a hopeful heart. 10 women came that day, all different, all carrying scars. She didn't start with rules or expectations. She started with a question. When was the first time you realized you were more than what happened to you? The answers came slowly, then like floodgates opening. Tears, laughter, rage, relief. By the session's end, every woman had written a line, a memory, a truth. Sarah read hers aloud last. I begged for milk and found a miracle. I thought I was falling apart, but it was the beginning of becoming whole. The women clapped softly. One of them reached out, touching Sarah's hand. You made this feel possible. Sarah smiled. You make it real. Back home, Anna was waiting with a surprise. She had taken a shoebox and turned it into her own letterbox, just like her mom's. On the lid, she had written in crayon, My big brave feelings. She showed Sarah her first letter. Dear future me, don't be afraid to be loud. Don't let anyone tell you you're too much. Remember you come from strong people, and soup always helps. Love, Anna. Sarah's eyes welled. You're going to change the world, baby girl. No, Anna said proudly. I'm going to write about it. And just like that, Sarah knew every scar become a sentence, every hurt a comma, every act a survival period. Her story was no longer one of escape. It was a legacy, and she was still writing. It was the first warm Saturday of spring when the call came. Sarah just finished hanging laundry in the backyard, Elijah babbled in the grass beside her, and Anna crouched nearby, drawing chalk murals across the stepping stones. Jerome was inside preparing lunch, humming an old Sam Cooke tune. Her phone buzzed on the windowsill. Hello? She answered, wiping her hands on her jeans. A woman's voice spoke, soft but urgent. Miss Walker? This is Karen Lewis from West Ridge Correctional. I'm calling on behalf of Darnell Johnson. Sarah's stomach tensed. He's not in trouble, the woman added quickly. Actually, he's requested to add a final note to the prison's rehabilitation exhibit. He asked specifically if he could quote your letter. Sarah blinked. What letter? The one you never sent. Her heart skipped. How did he? He said he wrote you, and though you never replied, he knew what your answer would be. He said it gave him peace, closure. And he wants to tell others what real accountability looks like. Sarah's mind spun. What exactly does he want to quote? Karen read, I forgive you because I want peace, but I won't forget and I won't go back. The silence stretched between them. Finally, Sarah exhaled. Yes, he can use it. Thank you, Karen said. You should know he's different now. He's not the man you remember. He'll be released later this year, but he's moving to another state. He has no intention of disrupting your life. Sarah nodded slowly, though the woman couldn't see her. That's good. When the call ended, she stood still for a moment, looking out at her children, Elijah reaching for a butterfly, Anna drawing hearts on the stones. She walked back inside and found Jerome washing carrots at the sink. That was a prison, she said. Darnell's using part of my letter in a program for inmates. Jerome dried his hands. How do you feel? Lighter, she said. Not because of him. Because it's done. That part of my past has been laid to rest. She joined him at the counter, slicing tomatoes. I'm thinking of holding a reading at the center, a gathering to share our writing publicly, give the women in my workshop a voice beyond those four walls. Jerome smiled. I'll be front row. 2 weeks later, the center was transformed. They hung string lights across the ceiling and filled the room with folding chairs. Volunteers baked cookies, brewed coffee. A small stage stood at the front with a simple sign, still standing, voices of survival. The room filled quickly. People from the neighborhood, students, advocates, survivors. Sarah wore a simple blue dress and no makeup. She didn't need armor tonight, only truth. She opened the evening with a few words. Tonight isn't about pain. It's about power, about taking back our stories and sharing them without shame. One by one, the women took the stage. They read poems, journal entries, letters to their past selves. There was laughter, tears, moments of stunned silence. But through it all, there was a collective heartbeat, steady, resilient, fierce. When it was Sarah's turn, she stepped up and opened her notebook. I was invisible, she began, but now I stand here seen. She shared the first chapter of her memoir. The night at the convenience store, the promise she made to the man who bought her milk, and the words that changed everything. I promise I'll pay when I grow up. The room inhaled. She closed with the same sentence that ended her first workshop. I begged for milk and found a miracle. I thought I was falling apart, but it was the beginning of becoming whole. When she stepped down, the applause was thunderous. Afterward, as guests mingled and music played softly in the background, a woman approached her, a stranger in her 60s, hair silver at the temples, eyes red-rimmed but kind. I don't know you, the woman said, but I feel like I've known you forever. Your story, it was mine once, and now I think I'm ready to tell it. Sarah embraced her. That night, as they packed up the chairs and turned off the lights, Anna ran up holding a paper crown made from folded flyers. I made you something, she said, because you're the queen of brave. Sarah laughed through tears and knelt. Then you must be the princess. Nope, Anna said proudly. I'm the author. At home, after the kids were asleep, Sarah sat once more at her writing desk. The manuscript was nearly finished. She wrote the final line slowly, her hand steady. This is not a story about rescue. This is a story about choosing to live, even when life gives you every reason not to. And if you're reading this, you've already started. She closed the notebook. Outside, the night was clear. Inside, her heart was full. And somewhere out there, someone else would begin again because she had. The story of Sarah teaches us that true healing begins when we reclaim our voice. It reminds us that survival is not the end of the journey, but the beginning of transformation. Through pain, resilience, and the courage to speak her truth, Sarah shows that even the most broken pieces can be gathered and turned into a legacy of strength. Her journey is a testament to the quiet power of community, forgiveness without forgetting, and the profound truth that we are more than what happened to us. We are who we choose to become.